Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm caught in a tree. I'm sure this is a lot easier with the cinematic camera stuff, but I'm too stupid to figure that out. So I just get up here and fly around. Welcome back everybody. We're going to do another tour today. Um, Ignore my replanting of my orchard back there. We had a mishap with game mechanics, and I had to go into creative mode and put the trees all back. But they're going to grow back. They were already there. I just had to fix it, and now it looks stupid. So ignore that. I apologize. You're also going to have to ignore this building, which is kind of getting in the way here, but its barrels kind of bleed over into what I'm about to show you. But what I'm about to show you is what I'm calling a brinery, which apparently is not the real term for this building, but we have a winery for wine, so in my mind, the thing that makes brine, that's a rhyme, is a brinery. And just linguistically speaking, it makes sense. But this is where brine is not just made, but also the pickling of produce happens. The reason why this building is being shown here, even though it's a newer addition to the world, is that the initial tour showed off our salting area, which is where we salted meats and vegetables. So we cured meat and pickled produce. It was in this one building. That building has since been done into two different buildings. It's that whole building initially, the original building has been redone, rebuilt, remodeled. That's the word I'm looking for. Remodeled into just be a butchery, which you can check out the other video on my profile to view that. I might even link it in the description if I get a hair in my ass. But with the building now being split into two, and I've shown the butchery, I felt obligated to go ahead and show the other counterpart, even though it's its own new separate building. So this is the Brinery tour. You can see from the outside that it has a darker set of walls with a lighter roof, which is kind of in contrast to the lighter walls and darker-ish roofs of my other builds. You can see where I have the gray ceramic. I do have some red ceramic dotted in there. And over there on the chemical plant, you can see some brown ceramic shingles. I don't know why I went with oak on this one. I think I just had a bunch of oak and decided to do it. Maybe I liked the way it looked. I can't quite remember why I did it this way. But I do know that if you have a dark base, you either have to go with a similarly dark roof, or you need to contrast it. Contrasting and blending in and color theory and all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand here. I am really getting tongue tied right now. But I'm color blind. So a lot of this is a little bit more difficult for me, but I like the way this building looks. Now, you guys, if you disagree, please let me know. I've, Maybe I need to do the roof differently. Maybe it needs to be a different color. Maybe it needs to have more going on. But I felt confident that I could get away with the darker stones here, because this little shed right here has darker stones. And so I had some and I got more, and then I did this. And I felt like it was a nice way to make this building not seem like the odd one out. And because that building already exists, I was hoping this one wouldn't really stick out like a sore thumb either. And when I'm walking around here, it doesn't ever really bother me, but I can see where this would throw some people see, tongue tied like a motherfucker. I can see where this would throw some people for a loop. Might break the cohesion of the whole area that I have going on here. But out here, over here by the winery, next to all this green, you got this towering building next to it, and when these grow back up, it'll all be bushy and green too. I feel like this really doesn't take away from the overall color scheme, especially when the chemical plant back there has also been done in some darker colors, which I will show at some point as well. Um, just trying to go over my thoughts as to why this one is so different in its colors. But you can see there's a lot of similarities. I do still use the beams for the windows, or the framing of the windows, the edging. Don't be edging. And then the trap doors on the shutters there on each side. I do that all the time. A little bit of plumbing implication right there. I do have it right here for that, but I felt it necessary to make it look like it's, going into the house. And neatly enough, this right here is right behind where we'll see the sink in a minute. But pretty standard stuff. This is how I do all my gables. I just put a slab in there and then chisel it down to be at the same angle as the actual roof itself to make the nice A-frame. And then just a little bit of beams here and there. I really feel like ebony beams just go with everything. Like no matter what color scheme you use, unless it's like a rainbow palette, you could probably throw ebony beams and doors and stuff on it, and it'll turn out looking okay. Um, I would argue the ebony is sort of doing a gradient from the light wood of the oak roof to the dark stone of the structure itself. Now, I might be tripping, y'all might not agree, but I feel like this does work, even as an isolated build. But this is where I was also experimenting with palettes and colors and stuff like that. A lot of my things tend to look brown and gray, and so this just seemed like a way to, deviate from that. And so I did. I also like putting the beams along the top as like a ridge. That little bit of difference right there, in my mind, makes the roof pop more. Because otherwise, it's just all that one color, but having that beam go down it, really a nice touch. And I've experimented doing the beams down each side, but they're kind of hard to use, and they don't always look right. And I feel like this is it's the minimum you could do. It's also the maximum I feel comfortable doing. But if you guys want to, experiment with this concept, I would love to see what you guys pull out. It would be pretty interesting to see how other people tackle roof decoration in this game. Because it's not like in Minecraft where you're just using stairs or whole blocks, and you'll have like coral and basalt and cobblestone like all right next to each other in a gradient. You have actual dedicated roofing pieces in this game. And so the approach is obviously going to be different with how you handle and tackle roofing in your builds. So if you guys have some things that you would like to show me, I would like to see them. I think I showed the outside of this plenty. I'm just going to go around here real quick to show you. I got this drape hanging here. Another window with the shutters, framed up the doorway with the ebony beams. I'm a big fan of brass. I think brass is not too bright, but it looks pretty elegant, and it doesn't blend in with the grays or the browns of other buildings. The copper is just too orange. It's cheap, but it's too orange. And the tin bronze is too bright. Gold is also way too shiny. The brass is just a really good color. And so brass torch holders and brass lanterns are my favorite. But next to that, you see the banner, and then next to that it's a fake window. I didn't want to put the window into the cellar. You'll see the cellar in there in a minute. So I just put shutters on it to give it texture. I felt like if they weren't there, that part of the wall would look too bare. And there I go, rhyming words again. But I felt it necessary, so I put it there. There's barrels along the outside. I felt like you needed to have a little overhang here to like protect this stuff from the elements, even though in game it doesn't matter. It just seems like when you have stuff like this, it needs to look like the people in the world care about protecting it. Like you wouldn't want leaves and bird droppings and snow and rain to get into your barrel of stuff, so you'd want to protect it. So if you're not doing it inside, we at least got to put a top on it. These barrels are coming out from underneath it, aren't getting protected, but that doesn't scream out to me. That doesn't break my immersion in the storytelling. Oh, well, they got this roof here. They obviously care about protecting this stuff. But then I come around here, I don't look at this and be like, oh, well, why did they cover this but not cover that? Now, maybe if I was Annie Austin patrolling around Cyberpunk Night City and I saw that, I might call that out and have that world building gripe. But as just somebody running around this rustic medieval environment, some barrels are not covered. Some barrels are covered. Maybe that tells me what these barrels are doing. Maybe these barrels are used for more important things. Maybe this is for refuse or trash or, some other kind of waste byproduct. There's no telling. But I felt like these on the back, at least, needed to have this awning coming off of it. And also it adds some texture and detail and some greeblies to this face of the building that, honestly, if I didn't put that awning here, I would have no idea what to do. Maybe some more shutters, maybe some more beams, another banner. This just seemed like the right thing to do, and so I did it. But now we'll carry on inside to the piece de resistance, the coup de grace. This is the whole reason for this thing. Now, all crafting for the salting of vegetables and the salting of meat takes place in the barrel. So there's really nothing that this room needs to be other than a place to make brine, and then to store the brine, and then to store the vegetables, and then to salt the vegetables. So a lot of this had to be just busy work to make this thing seem functional and real and lived in and used. And so immediately I made jars and stuff of like spices and herbs and chisel those down. Some of these you can't tell, but some of them actually aren't even like full jars. They're only like 2 blocks. Like, see how that's that's 2 by 2, that's 4 stacked up. Some of them are only 2 wide, like a facade. And then actually in the furthest back, you can't tell, but I just chiseled into the wall and then replaced them with the colored blocks here to make it look like there's a jar. But it's 2-dimensional because it's like chiseled into the wall, so it kind of looks like the old PS2 convenience store shelves you'd see in like the windows when you're driving by like Grand Theft Auto 3 or maybe even the early Driver games. I don't know if any of y'all played those. But just the texture that makes it look like there's jars. And so using the 2D texture, the semi 3D facades, and then the full 3D voxel chiseled pieces up front gives it a lot of depth and variety and makes it look like there's a lot of shit going on. It also saved me on some time and effort. But underneath the spices and stuff are some empty jars. Maybe this is a bundled up thing of spice that you are going to be using to make more of this, or an herb or what have you. Some books on how to do those things, and then some sauces and jars and bottles of God knows what. It could be anything. It's about the implication. These could be anything. This right here is some kind of paddle or something. Maybe it's used to mix things. And then down here are some boxes and bags as just containers. And this is all chiseled into the wall. And there's at least 50% of the wall remaining. So behind this door is the cellar. But me doing all of this into that wall did not break the cellar mechanics on the other side of it. Now, I could have chiseled this out into this space and kept that wall solid, but then I'd have to go down to a single door, and it would be a lot more cramped in here, which might have done me some favors. I wouldn't have had to fill so much, dead space, but this is a small build anyway, so I really didn't feel the need to make it more claustrophobic. Over here we have some functional storage, mass salt storage, buckets of brine, water buckets, and then some vegetables or something can be stored down there real quick, especially in the winter when it's cold and they get stored well anyway. But the real cellar is behind that wall. You can see I have some rafters and beams and trusses up there with I guess these ebony beams are where you would, like in modern times, nail drywall to the ceiling, but I left it bare. Maybe it's like that for ventilation. Maybe it's like that for laziness. Maybe it's like that because that's just the architectural style. I thought it looked nicer having it have a busy looking see-through open air attic versus just having a flat roof. Plus it gave me something to imply that this cauldron is hanging from. And I think that's nice. I didn't have to like completely re-chisel it and like add a rope or any of that nonsense. I could just hang it up there. Some smaller shelves and some hanging fruits and vegetables are implied here, just to make it look like, again, there's more going on than what actually is, because I don't have any mods that make the food production more complicated, and vanilla Vintage Story has not exactly left the 3x3 crafting grid that Minecraft uses. There is a lot of crafting done in the world, like the napping and clay forming and stuff, but a lot of it still happens in your inventory. And there's not even a crafting station, so a lot of this is unnecessary. I just did it to make it look nice, and I think I did a good job. Here's another storage, mostly for containers, but I left that one blank. And my famous cabinet design here is also blank, just so there's ample room for storage. When I first started building this game, I thought I had plenty of room for storage all the time, and then I keep coming back like, oh, well, I actually need to store this here too, damn. And then I have to redo the whole build. So I've gotten in the habit of just giving myself more storage up front, because like my dad always said, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I would rather have storage that I'm not using for when I ultimately need it than to need storage and have not put it there in the first place. So there's a little bit of it not being used, and like these bookshelves are pointless. They're just there to make it look like there's, more cabinetry than just what I have chiseled down here. This is a usable sink. The faucet is not is not usable, but this is an infinite water source that you can get water out of to make brine. Here's the instructions on brine making. Some books are actually on the side of this to hide the side of the crate to make this look like there's more going on, to also hide it, and to also solidify that, maybe you need some instructions. Maybe there's recipes. Maybe you get bored and want to read a fairy tale by the Grimm brothers. But there's books there, and there's also books there, so I'm hoping that that makes a connection in your brain, and this all looks like one cohesive build. It just all flows together, is my intent with that. But I didn't want to put books in there because why would you just have that many books in a brinery and you wouldn't really have books above your kitchen? I wish you could put other things on these shelves. Supposedly they're changing the way display system works in 1.22, but we're probably at least a few more months off from that. So for now, this is going to have to suffice. You can see how I've chiseled the windows, though, how they're set in. They are still thick enough that this does count as a room, but I've chiseled in a windowsill and a little frame on the roof, and then, or not the roof, the ceiling, and then the actual frame of the window panes themselves, which is just a simple, left and right, and then one across the middle. And it's just repeated on these two, so they're all consistent. This one is hidden by this bookshelf, but I didn't think that was that big of a deal breaker. And if you go in here, this is just a very boring cellar. If you want to see a more decorated cellar, you can check out my cellar tour video. It goes into the actual main cellar system underneath my house. This is just where we are going to be doing the actual pickling for the most part. That way, whatever gets done in here can just stay in the barrels, and before we move it in here, or if we're full here and full everywhere else, they can stay here until, room opens up. But having your pickling and your salting and even your wine making being done, performed, created in a cellar saves you time. You don't have to bucket the stuff between things. You can just leave it alone. That it'll automatically be, fighting against spoilage. It'll be preserved because it's already in a cellar. I would even argue that things like brine and wine and maybe even the salted meats and vegetables could just be stored in the barrels themselves, in the cellar. It's just not going to hold as much. I think you can only hold a stack of 64. But if you don't want to use crates or something, or you just have barrels, or you just like the look of it and your storage space is big enough and you just want it to look if you like ground storage, you'll probably like storing things in barrels, is what I'm getting at here. So it is a way to do it. It's just probably not the most efficient. What is efficient is going ahead and doing these processes inside a cellar. My meat is salted in a cellar. This is brined in a cellar. The only food production I don't do in a cellar is the cheese making and pie making. And then my winery actually doesn't get done in a cellar. I didn't think about it until after I'd built the winery, and it's not built to be a cellar. So take it from me, wherever you're doing your wine, do it in a cellar. It saves you so much time and effort when it comes to transporting the liquid between the buckets and the barrels. Now, if you have the carry-on mod, and you can just pick up the barrels, ignore all that. You do whatever the fuck you want. You got that mod, you can pick up the barrel full of stuff and move it. You go right on ahead. But I guess that's really about it. I mean, like I said, this is decorative. You can take a look just to see kind of how I did things. Just take a gander here. I'm sure you can pause the video at any point in time to get a look. If you know how to chisel, then just looking at this, you should be able to tell how I did it. This is a block that I've just chiseled negative space into and then re-chiseled shelves and stuff out onto. And then, this is clutter. I've seen a lot of people chisel cabinetry and things like that. The sink might be a bit tricky. I will say that. I'm not quite sure how I was able to get this one to work, but I think this is technically a one block source versus having to have a block on this side to block it. But I think it only works because this side is so thick and every other block around it is solid enough that no water can get out. If there wasn't a cabinet right here, the water would be pouring out the side of it. So messing around with that definitely takes practice. I don't even have it down to a science. But this is a functional infinite water source, and I do like having it. Um, so just something to consider when you're doing things that need water. Always have a water source nearby, and I just try to incorporate it or even hide it sometimes, just depending on the case. But that is the Brinery. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll fly by just one more time. There's really not much to see. It is just a fucking rectangle, and this one side is kind of blocked because of this building that I'm not going to tell you what it does. And then that's not ominous at all. Not foreboding. Uh, it's real simple. The building itself is real simple. I guess the real appeal of this piece is going to be the chiseling, which you have seen. But yeah, I just like having my pickling station as a different building than the butchery. And you could do this in all kinds of different ways. Like I had this set up like it's a small little medieval shack. But you can set it up like it's a whole pickling plant, like with automation, implied automation, the implication, with jars and stuff like that. But I just went with the rustic, simple route. I do have a kind of quasi colonial, industrial build style going here. I wouldn't call it steampunk, but it does have a lot of industrial aspects to it. I mean, we have the pipes and everything for sure, and then my massive factory over there that you'll probably only have seen any bits of if you've been on Reddit. But I really don't know what to call this style, but I felt like this was the way to do this building and still have it feel grounded and immersive in what's happening. Plus, it's over here by like what is essentially all the farmland, and so making it look like a tiny little farmhouse or something seemed to be the better route versus making something like that guy over there that looks like that just looks like a bunch of industry. I didn't want that to be over here. This is the countryside, that's the industry, and I'm trying to keep that separation. See, we're even next to the vineyard. There's gonna be more fields and stuff over there. It's all coming together. But I think I've rambled enough. I think I've showed it off enough. Like I said before, I'm kind of just going in order. Although this Brinery is a newer addition, it was part of an older building, so that's why I felt the need to, since it's been separated into its own thing, I felt the need to go ahead and show it. I'm actually not sure what's next. I might get to the livestock, or I may go ahead and do the brick kiln and beehive kilns and stuff over there, like the pit kilns, the pit kilns and the beehive kilns. I might go ahead and show that off. Really not sure what's next. So, if you have a preference on anything in this background that you want to see, let me know, and I will do that one next. Otherwise, like I said, I'm just going to try to go in the order that I made them. If there's anything about a specific build that I've already done, even this one right here, if there's anything that you want to see in more detail, or you want a breakdown, actual step-by-step tutorial of, I'll do it. I don't want to do it, but I'll do it. Just ask me, let me know, and I will commit to it. If there's a bit, I will commit to it. So, thank you guys so much for showing all the support and attention. I know my viewership has kind of dipped down the past 2 videos. I was getting like 800 views, and now the last 2 have like around 100. I'm going to blame YouTube algorithm, but if you guys can, like, subscribe, share it. I'm not trying to go viral. I'm not trying to make money off of YouTube. I have a business. I have a job. If you want to go check out my website, please do. But otherwise, I'm just trying to show this stuff off so other vintage story players can see it and maybe get inspiration. Because people on Reddit were so supportive and loving and interested in my builds. I made a video, and then now other people have seen them and are also interested and supportive and, are wanting inspiration. So if there's any way I can help facilitate that, I will spread the word. However, a key component of social media, and YouTube especially, is the sharing on your end and the liking and subscribing. I do not care if you like or subscribe my video. It does not hurt me one way or the other. However, if you like what you're seeing and you want other people to see it, that's probably the best way to make it happen, Captain. So, thank you all who have been liking and subscribing. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, feedback, leave them down in the comments. I read everything and I reply to everything. You can scroll back and look. I'm pretty dedicated to you guys. I'm not sure when the next video will be, but until next time, thank you all so much. I love you.